afternoon. My name is Mallory Stanley, and for this video, I will be giving my young adult fantasy literature recommendations. I have selected 5 recently published books from 2018 or later from the Lafayette Public Library, with 2 of these books being series books, and they come with a little bit of a dark mystery, all while still including your mythical creatures, your adventures, and of course, lots of plot twists. And bonus, they're all under 250 pages. So for those like myself who have trouble finishing books that are around the 400 page count, who have a busy schedule, who are involved in extracurriculars, I thought, or maybe you're just a reluctant reader, that kind of thing, then I thought that these books would be a great help for those that are still wanting to read or still interested in fantasy, but just either do not have the time or the patience, have trouble, keeping themselves entranced in the plot. I thought that all of these books were really great reads for my young adult audience. I have these first 2 books. These are both published by Paul Cornell, and before I get into these books, fun things about Paul Cornell is that he was the director in the show Doctor Who, so very famous. If you like DC, he did Batman and Robin. He was also part of the Avengers a little bit, I believe. So he was a very busy, and he's alive. He's a very busy and successful man, but we're going to talk about these 2. We're going to talk about this first, this pink one. I thought it was really nice. It's The Lights Go Out in Lychford, and this one begins with, you're in the town of Lychford, this fictional place, and you have a priest, you have a wise woman, and you have these 2 girls, and they are noticing something wrong is going on with this town. So they're trying to figure out what they can do. The wise woman is trying to help what she can. These 2 girls are trying to see how they can aid in their town that they've lived in when the stranger comes along, and he's saying that he could save the town all by himself and with no strings attached. He hasn't listed a cost or anything. But if you're going to have something this big and you're a stranger, is this really something of no cost? Is this something that is believable? Can the stranger really save the town from, spinning out like it is going dark? We don't know. You'll have to read it. How did I feel about this book? I thought that it provided not only the shortness, it was concise, it had lots of imagery, it gave the literal and metaphorical darkness in this story. I thought that the story was an easy, quick read for young adults that are interested in the genre of fantasy with some dark mystery. You have all the kinds of things that you like, so I thought this one was a good one. I also have this second one, also by Paul Cornell, as I had said, The Last Stand in Lychford. This one's a blue book right here, if you can see. And we are following our girls, Lizzie and Autumn. We have the priest and the wise woman have gone missing. So more trouble is ensuing for these young girls and for their town of Lychford. Lychford is now completely dark. There are more problems. The stranger from before has caused more problems. Surprise. And you are finding out lots of things go around in this book that are just very troublesome for these girls. So you're trying to see how, since now it is up to Lizzie and Autumn almost alone to do this, alone but together, to save this town. So you have to kind of figure it out about this. What I like about this book, both of them, again, I thought that both books were short, but I also really liked, just for myself as a woman, that it was a woman-led protagonist, 2 women being the main protagonist. I see a lot of fantasy books, like older ones especially, that are male-led protagonists. So to see that change, I thought was very progressive. I thought that it gave a bit of diversity while also still remaining in their dark and mystery and still remaining true to what fantasy should and shouldn't be. So I thought that both these books are really good and I recommend them both greatly. I have my third book here, Flyaway by Kathleen Jennings with the heart, if you can see it. um, this one is published in 2020. It's a kind of half mystery, half fairy tale kind of thing. It's a 5 perspective book, so it's a little bit trickier to follow along than the other two, where you have very different perspectives about, somebody died and they all have to claim, they're all saying their things and their thoughts, where their whereabouts. These different people, they have chapter 1 and 2 is a girl named Linda Aberdeen. She's a city girl. She has a husband. She's got kids. Little girl. Then they have Gary, a 12-year-old, who is sometimes referred to as Jack. He's there, and he's a little country boy. He's a small child. Then they have V, they have Gary. There's a couple issues running along with these young girls and boys along with the older one, and they are all somehow connected. You have to each read their perspectives and the very big drama of this town of Renegade, and you need to figure out who is the killer, who was killed, how they were killed. It's kind of like really, it's a lot. It's about the same level as Darkness as my other two books with the Lychford series, but it's definitely a lot more vivid and a lot more, kind of killing type beat instead of just missing. So it's a little bit heavier than the other ones, but you just have to kind of see when you have all these perspectives and an unreliable narrator. It's really difficult to see who can you believe in this kind of with these kinds of story setups. How do I feel about this book? I happen to also I thought this book was okay. I thought for myself, I typically try to stay away from different perspectives because I have trouble following along how far I am with the chapters as well as the different perspectives. So I have to every now and again kind of flip and say, okay, whose story is this? Whose story is that? What do we know? What did we remember? So I definitely think it's not as much of, even though it is short, it's definitely a bit of a heavier reading more than something that you can just kind of pick up and read in your pastime. You really have to kind of finish each chapter before taking a break if you wanted to. So if you do have a little bit more time to yourself, you can definitely read this book. But if you're looking for something a bit lighter, I liked Paul Cornell's a little bit more, so I'm a bit biased against Miss Kathleen Jennings, but overall I thought it was pretty okay. I have my fourth book, Burning Roses by S.L. Huang, so very different, and this one is a different take on fantasy. Of course, they're all different takes of fantasy. They're all very published. So it's a very different fantasy than what I had read when I was in school. It's a twisted tale based on Red Riding Hood. We all know the story, Red Riding Hood, there's a wolf, things go wrong, but instead of Red Riding Hood, she is Miss Rosa, and Rosa is done with wolves. She doesn't want to be in the woods. That is not her anymore. This is a different woman entirely. She is actually an archer, so very different from what I was reading. But there is lots going on with Rosa. She's more she's our hero, so she's trying to, keep saving the world, saving the world, saving the world, and it is just getting really tiring, and she's just waiting for, her show to be over. She is ready to retire almost. It sounds funny to hear, your main protagonist retire in your story. However, okay, this was the biggest twist. I thought this has, I guess, biggest plot twist is that there are sunbirds attacking this world with Rosa, and the Sunbirds are slightly villainous, so when she has to team up with an unlikely partner, will not go into details, you'll have to read it, will not spoil it. You're trying to figure out how this much older version of Red Riding Hood and this unlikely character are somehow supposed to team up and go against these Sunbirds. So, very, very different. I liked this book because it was a bit lighter than the other books that are a lot less murder and killing and missing people. It's a very fighting kind of action based fantasy fairy tales. So I like twisted fairy tales. I think that we had done the Red Riding Hood trope many, many years. So to see that they have this twist, I didn't know that there was a twisted fairy tale out there about Red Riding Hood. I thought that this book was really great. I really enjoyed it, and I will definitely be recommending this to my future students as a prospective teacher. My final book, The Black God's Drums. I thought that this one it's actually not only our shortest, but also has a lot of heavy undertones. So while this may not be our heaviest in terms of plot, it's definitely our heaviest in undertones. You definitely have to reread a couple parts, not just for plot difficulty as with the Kathleen's book, Flyaway, with different perspectives. This follows the same our same main character, but it's definitely they're all very different from each other. Oh, it's actually our oldest. I misspoke. It's our oldest book, published in 2018, and this is actually the only one that is actually set in a real place. It's in New Orleans. It's this teen girl. She's aboarding the ship called the Midnight Robber, and she has to gain the captain's trust, who's trying to find a scientist. So very different plot from what we normally have. It has lots of dark euphemisms, and there are powers involved with our main character. However, the powers that she has is withheld with our the spirit Oya. She is separate from her in a way, so it's definitely a struggle between our main character and the spirit that gives her these powers with different intentions and different paths, if that makes sense. So this one was definitely a bit difficult, maybe, if I were to put an adjective towards it, but it's definitely still a great book. Like I said, heavy undertones. It is our oldest in my selection in 2018, but it still has lots of great themes, lots of course, great plot twists. It was an overall wonderful story, and I feel very strongly about this book. I definitely think that if you were to present this to your young adult audience, that you make sure to provide some kind of warning that this one is a bit heavier and has some historical undertones and euphemisms involved in this book, but it definitely is, just like all the other books that I've said, are a great recommendation for the fantasy, mystery, young adult literature reading. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope that you read all these books. I thought that they're really great.